Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favourite games of the previous decade, which somehow released in 2016. I cannot believe it has been 8 whole years since the masterpiece Dishonored 2 released. Dishonored 2 was the game that cemented Arcane as one of my favourite developers, and it's somewhat sad to see what's happened to them in recent years. I thought Deathloop was just fine, and Redfall, well, the less said about Redfall the better. But it's been a year since that disaster occurred, and I wanted to go back to an Arcane from times long past. So that's why I decided to play Dishonored 2 in 2024. One of the main attractions of Dishonored 2 is the game's setting, Karnaca. The game takes place in such an explicitly depressing place. The streets are lined with bodies, there's blood and rats everywhere, you'll encounter things such as dead whales beached in some areas. The environmental storytelling on show is just horrifyingly beautiful. You meet a fair amount of people on your journey through Karnaca, and pretty much none of them are happy. The presentation of this world manages to paint a better picture than any amount of exposition really could. It's the perfect type of setting for a game like this. The themes and subject matter of the game suit this world perfectly, with a layer of uneasiness seeping out from every crack. From the architectural marvels of Karnaca to the intricate social hierarchies that govern its inhabitants, every aspect of the game's world contributes to its immersive and compelling narrative. One of the most striking aspects of the world building is its visual design. The game takes place in the fictional city of Karnaca, of course, a bustling metropolis with a distinct aesthetic inspired by Mediterranean architecture and Victorian-era design, from the sun-drenched streets of the Dust District to the opulent interiors of the Grand Palace. Each location in Karnaca is rendered with exquisite attention to detail, immersing players in a world that feels both familiar and fantastical. In addition to the general visual design, Dishonored 2 excels in its world building through its environmental storytelling, as I alluded to beforehand. As players explore the streets of Karnaca, they encounter a wealth of environmental details that help to flesh out the world and its history. There are plenty of notes and journals as such that you can find and read through to get even more backstory on the area that you're exploring. Each detail serves to deepen the player's understanding of the world that they're playing in. Moreover, Dishonored 2 actually features a rich and complex lore that further enhances the world building. The game is set in a world where technology and the occult coexist, giving rise to a society that is both technologically advanced and steeped in superstition simultaneously. As players uncover the secrets of Karnaca and its ruling elite, they are drawn into a web of political intrigue and supernatural mystery that adds depth and complexity to the game's narrative, which I feel like it desperately needed, as on its own, as I'll get to later on, I don't actually think that the plot points of the game are overly strong, but I will explain that in further detail later on. Another notable aspect of the world building is the social dynamics of class structure. Karnaca is very much a city that's divided, with stark disparities between the wealthy elite who live in luxury and the impoverished masses who toil in the city's factories and mines. The social divide is reflected in the game's architecture, with grand mansions in certain stages with horrible slums in others, and the characters who are shaped by their social status and background also manage to bring this feeling alive. The world also changes depending on your antics through the story, as high chaos playthroughs lead to more rats, for example, in the streets of Karnaca. As players navigate the morally ambiguous choices presented to them by the game, they are forced to confront the consequences of their actions head on. This thematic depth adds weight to the game's narrative, elevating it beyond a mere exercise in escapism and imbuing it with a sense of relevance and meaning. You can listen and talk to the people through the city that you meet that reference events that are going on in the main game, as well as giving clues to the safe locations or alternate methods of beating your objective. The game feels so seamless and less video gamey. It's less following objectives and more thinking of the optimal way of completing your goal. It also goes without saying that the trademark Dishonored art style is also perfect for the vibe and aesthetic that they were going for. Then we have just the general level design, which is some of the best in the entire industry, if we're being completely honest. From its sprawling, interconnected environments to its intricately crafted missions, every aspect of the game's design serves to immerse the players further in the rich and dynamic world that they're in. At the heart of Dishonored 2's level design philosophy lies its commitment to player agency and choice. Each level in the game is meticulously designed to offer players multiple paths, approaches and solutions to whatever challenges that they encounter on the way. Whether it's secretly moving through the streets to get from building to building, or managing to go through different floors and rooms in a heavily guarded mansion, players are given the freedom to tackle these objectives in a manner that reflects their own individual playstyle and preference. This emphasis on player choice not only enhances the replay value of the game, which this game has a hell of a lot of, but it also reinforces its status as a shining example of player-driven storytelling in the medium of video games, something that I feel like really needs to be present more in video games and something I am a huge fan of. Dishonored 2 also places a very heavy emphasis on verticality. Each level is filled with hidden nooks, secret passages, and vertical spaces that encourage exploration and reward curiosity. From eavesdropping on conversations between NPCs to uncovering hidden caches of loot and resources, players are constantly being rewarded for taking the time to explore their surroundings and engage with the world around them further. The environmental details and set pieces scattered throughout each level serve to flesh out the game's world and narrative, providing players with clues and context that not only give them a satisfying feedback, but also enhance their understanding of the story and its characters. Another key aspect of the level design is the non-linear structure and open-ended objectives. Unlike linear, corridor-driven games, Dishonored 2 allows players to approach missions in a non-linear fashion, providing multiple entry points, objectives, and outcomes depending on how you choose to play the level. This non-linear structure not only adds to the game's replay value, as I mentioned earlier, but also encourages players to experiment with different strategies, playstyles, abilities, fostering a sense of creativity and agency rarely seen on this scale in modern video games. Furthermore, Dishonored 2's level design is complemented by its dynamic and emergent gameplay systems. Players are given access to a wide range of supernatural abilities, gadgets and tools that can be used to manipulate the environment and outmaneuver enemies. From teleporting short distances with Blink as you could do in the first game, to possessing rats and other creatures which you could also do in the first game, to other stuff such as Domino where you can link two enemies together, kill one and the other one dies too. Players often feel empowered to approach encounters in the manner that suits them due to the vast range of options that they have at their disposal. This emergent gameplay ensures that no two playthroughs of Dishonored 2 are ever really the same, as players discover new strategies and solutions to the challenges that they encounter, and I should know, as I have finished this game like 5 times now. Dishonored 2's core structure is central to the game's success, offering players a rich and immersive experience that rewards exploration, creativity and player agency, is something that really resonated with a lot of people and contributed massively to Dishonored 2's success. As such, Dishonored 2 stands as a shining example of how meticulous level design and structure can elevate the medium of video games to new heights of artistic and narrative expression. I chose to beat the game 3 times this time around in pursuit of the Platinum Trophy because I was playing the game on my PlayStation profile and I played it previously on my Xbox profile. So I thought, why not go and get the Platinum? But I didn't end up getting the Platinum, did I? Because of a stupid bug trophy. I hate it when stuff like that happens. My first playthrough was low chaos, 0 kills or detections, which was quite difficult but not as hard as I imagined it would be. My second playthrough was high chaos, kill everything, a lot of fun but very simple, and my third playthrough was using no powers at all. I found that each time around it was essentially like playing a different game. Your mindset when approaching every objective on a smaller scale completely alters when changing the way you play so drastically. We've just spent about 5 minutes talking about level design, and I haven't even mentioned the Clockwork Mansion, which seems criminal, so we're going to do that now. The Clockwork Mansion is simply a marvel of design and engineering, featuring shifting walls, moving platforms, and intricate mechanisms that create a dynamic and ever-changing environment. The mansion's layout is designed to be both visually stunning and functionally complex, with each room and corridor offering new challenges and opportunities for exploration. One of the key features of the Clockwork Mansion is its transformative architecture. Players can manipulate levers and switches to reconfigure the mansion's layout, revealing hidden passages, secret rooms, or even alternate pathways. This dynamic element of the level design adds a layer of puzzle solving to the gameplay, as players must navigate the shifting landscape whilst evading patrolling guards and security systems. There is even a trophy for eliminating the target of this level without him ever knowing you were there, which is something that is really simple to do once you know how to do it, but trying to figure out how to do that is insanely difficult. But the game gives you all of the tools you need to be able to do that if that's what you choose to strive for. Furthermore, the Clockwork Mansion is one of the levels I would say is filled with the most environmental storytelling elements that add a hell of a lot of depth and context to the level. From the lavish furnishings of the main hall to the cluttered workshops of the mansion's creator, players are given glimpses into the lives of characters who inhabit these sort of spaces. And that's before even mentioning the Clockwork Soldiers themselves, who are insanely terrifying foe on a first playthrough, but once you do figure out the best way to get around them, they become less of a threat, but you still would rather not run into them. And even then, right, after we mentioned all of that and the Clockwork Mansion, they then proceeded to pull a time travel level out of their ass. This level stands out for its non-linear approach, as players can shift between the present and the past at will, which alters the mansion's layout and events in each time period. As a small side note, it was an absolute bitch to complete this level without getting spotted for that trophy. If you're gonna go for that trophy, if you get through this level, you'll be completely fine. We then have the combat. We're already 11 minutes in and we haven't mentioned the combat or the story. Good lord, I'll try and keep things a bit more brief now. Players are not confined to a single playstyle or approach. Instead, they are encouraged to experiment with different strategies to achieve their objectives, whether employing stealth, direct confrontation, or the most likely option, which is a combination of both. Players have the freedom to tailor their playstyle to suit whichever situation demands it. Stealth is a cornerstone of the gameplay experience though, I have to say. Players can choose to approach encounters with enemies quietly, using the environment to their advantage to remain undetected. This approach sometimes allows players to bypass confrontations altogether, avoiding unnecessary bloodshed and potentially, or getting yourself the good ending. Moreover, the game rewards players for employing stealth by providing bonuses such as additional resources or information that may aid them further on in their journey. Alternatively, players can opt for a, more aggressive approach, engaging enemies directly in combat with a variety of weapons, gadgets and supernatural abilities at their disposal. You can dispatch foes with deadly precision and efficiency. However, this approach does come with its own set of consequences, as you get less bonuses and heavily increase your risk of alerting additional enemies and also of getting the bad ending. But it's also incredibly fun. The beauty of Dishonored 2 lies in its ability to accommodate both playstyles, with their own advantages and drawbacks. Players are encouraged to experiment with both really, adapting their tactics to suit the challenges that they encounter at the time. Whether opting for stealth or direct confrontation, players are empowered to shape the outcome of the game through whichever they decide. The only drawback of going low chaos is that you don't really get to fully appreciate the depth of the game's combat. Dishonored 2 isn't just an excellent stealth experience, which it undoubtedly is, it's also a magnificent sandbox where you're free to utilise your abilities to kill enemies in truly emphatic fashion. Abilities such as Domino, as I mentioned beforehand, were fantastic. On the flip side, the stealth choices such as Corvo's Possession, which I also mentioned earlier, allows you to possess an animal, such as a rat for example, and just run past enemies altogether without them even knowing you're there. These different abilities are a great reason for 2 playthroughs. Enemy attacks are generally telegraphed really well. The combat itself isn't overly difficult, but if you're trying to cause carnage, it's easy to get overwhelmed by a high number of enemies, and you do take a lot of damage. There's not a lot of margin for error if you're going hand to hand, but the satisfaction you get upon completing a combat encounter is fantastic. Now, for the story. As I mentioned earlier, the story of Dishonored 2 isn't something that I think of immediately when discussing the game. The game kicks off with a coup on Emily, Corvo's daughter from the first game, and you then choose whether to play as Corvo or Emily, with the other being turned to stone. You must then defeat Delilah and save either Corvo or Emily. The story is fine, but I much prefer the themes and the subtext to the plot itself. One of the central themes of the game is the abuse and corruption of power, with the game's story revolving around a struggle for control of the throne. Throughout the game, players encounter characters who wield their power for selfish or nefarious reasons, such as Delilah, often at the expense of the common people. Morality is another prominent theme in this game, as players are constantly faced with the moral dilemmas and choices that have far-reaching consequences. This usually comes in the form of whether to kill your target or incapacitate them, although some of them, such as the non-lethal way of killing Jindosh, would definitely seem to be a hell of a lot less humane than just killing him. The game does encourage you to consider the ethical implications of your actions, but at the end of the day, it's completely up to you, and it's a very replayable game, so just do both. The consequences of these choices are reflected directly in the game's story, as characters react differently depending on the player's actions, and the city of Karnaca, as I of course mentioned earlier, changes in response. Dishonored 2 also explores the theme of legacy and the weight of familial expectations. Both Emily and Corvo are burdened by the legacy of their ancestors and the responsibilities that come with their royal bloodline. Throughout the game, they must grapple with their own identities and decide what kind of rulers they want to be, whether they will follow in the footsteps of their predecessors or forge their own path. This theme is reinforced through the presence of other characters who have their own connections to the past, as well as through the game's emphasis on the consequences of one's actions on future generations. Dishonored 2 is a thematically rich experience that explores complex issues of power, morality and legacy. Through its engaging narrative, immersive world building and dynamic gameplay, the game challenges players to consider the consequences of their actions and the kind of world they want to rule over. Whether they choose to embrace their powers or reject them, to show mercy or seek vengeance, players will be confronting the ethical dilemmas inherent in wielding power and the impact that that can have on individuals and society as a whole. And it's because of things like that Dishonored 2 is a game that I wish we got more games like it, and why I think it is undoubtedly a masterpiece. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope that you did enjoy it. I understand it was a bit longer than my usual ones, but I really hope you enjoyed it. I loved making it. I loved Dishonored 2. But that is all for now. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. I will give you a high five through the screen. And if you enjoyed it, obviously, you'll want to see more. Subscribe, because I upload every single week. But that is all for now. Have a nice day, and goodbye.
Empress, I don't think I'm very good at this.
You're still learning. Don't worry about the rabble-rousers.